So in question 9, we want to take up the topic of the example of Esau's life, of his knowledge of God, of his desire for God, and yet the contempt with which he treated God's blessing in his life. And so this is a great passage, especially it supports the Wesleyan view. It illustrates the Wesleyan view of perseverance, of the need to work out your faith with fear and trembling, the need to give works of faith as evidence of your faith. Things that we'll talk about in later chapters, but here it is even now. We're talking about Esau. In Genesis chapter 25, we get the initial story of Esau and Jacob, and of course there's more to the story than that, but in this case, both Esau and Jacob want the blessing of God, want the inheritance of being the one who would come under the blessing of God. And Esau technically has that blessing because he was born seconds before Jacob was born, but Jacob wants it. And so here's Jacob got food and Esau's hungry, and Jacob says, you can have some food, but I want that blessing. And Esau says, well, what good's a blessing to me if I'm hungry, if I'm starving? And we're told in that passage that he despised his birthright by doing that. Now, what it means is he showed contempt for it. He said, yes, I believe in it. There's no question that Esau believed in the birthright, that believed in the blessing of God and coveted the blessing of God. There's no question that he wanted the blessing of God. It was just that he wasn't willing to suffer for the blessing of God. He wasn't willing to pay the price of being a disciple of Jesus Christ, to pay the price of belonging to God. And so Esau said, well, yes, I'll recant because it hurts too much not to recant. And so he gave up his blessing. You understand, I'm mixing my metaphors a little bit there. He gave up his blessing. He surrendered it to Jacob, who made sure that he then claimed it at another stage. But Esau, then when we get to the book of Hebrews, reference is made of Esau, and it says that godless Esau. When we read the godless Esau, we could think, oh, that means Esau who had no God. And in a technical way, that is what it's saying. It wasn't that he didn't believe in God, it's that he served no God. He was submissive to no God. He knew of God, he wanted God, he actually had a hold of God, but he wasn't willing to to sacrifice himself for the work of God. And so that godless Esau, don't be like him. And in many ways, Esau is the example of greater sinfulness than those who just don't believe in God. He is an example of apostasy. He is an example of someone who knew the truth. He is an example of the sow that returns to the mud, of the dog that returns to its vomit, because Esau knew about God, but despised, that showed contempt for the goodness of God, the gifts of God. And so that was Esau reflecting our part in this salvation. If we claim to have faith in God, then live it out. Show us what it looks like in your life. What things do you do in your life that can only be explained by the fact that you're a believer in Jesus Christ, that you're a follower after God? So Esau's a good example for us.